we're talking about faith. We're taking this book. This is Think and Grow Rich. This is my original version of the book. Some of you guys have seen it. I just had a bunch of people in last week, and I shared for a mastermind group. It was so great to see all of their books. Everybody kind of brought their version of their Think and Grow Rich, and we were all kind of comparing how beat up our books are and what's all underlined. And in the links, there's a way for you to get a download of this book that I'm teaching from that has all the line numbers. It just makes it easier as you're kind of going through the study. So there should be a link in the comments where you can download the book for free. You can get my teaching notes for the author's preface for free. There's another free gift that you can get there. So all kinds of good stuff there. But we're filtering this. This is TAGR 4. It's TAGR 6. And in each one of the TAGRs, what I've been trying to do is filter it through a thinking, right? Through what's a thinking model. And this is really an entrepreneur's journey. So if you're an entrepreneur, or you're thinking about becoming an entrepreneur, and you were sitting down with Napoleon Hill, and he was talking and taking you through the book, what would you really need to pull out from the wisdom of the book if you were an entrepreneur? So we're not, again, this is not a study of necessarily Think and Grow Rich. We're using the principles of Think and Grow Rich for a study for entrepreneurs. So now we've talked about the author's preface and introduction. In both those two sections, I call those kind of the promises section, right? He lays a foundation for that there's a secret in the book, that there is a formula for success and achievement in the book, and that if you can find this secret, if you could use this formula, you can create and have anything that you want in your life. We looked at the chapter on desire, and in the chapter on desire, we highlighted what I believe to be the secret of the book, which is whenever we start out with a dream, it starts out kind of as a want or a wish, and then it kind of intensifies to a hope, and then it turns into a desire, and then it turns into kind of this dominating desire, then a burning desire, then he says a white heat of desire, and then it turns into this all-consuming obsession. And I think the secret of the book is understanding the transmutation of that thought energy, increasing the amplitude of the vibration of what your dream is, what your desire is. So each level of this, the desire, the idea crystallizes, it gets clearer, you tend to focus more on it. It increases in its amplitude of vibration until ultimately it becomes the dominant thing that you're thinking about. When you wake up in the morning, it's the first thing you're thinking about, right? When you're going to bed at night, it's the last thing that you're thinking about. It's an all-consuming obsession. And I believe that is really the secret of the book. Now we look at this principle of faith. And make no mistake about it, as an entrepreneur, it's going to require that you have faith. And for most of us, we internalize faith. We have to have faith in ourselves. And certainly that's true. We have to have a degree of confidence, right? And as we go through this chapter, he actually has a formula to help us develop faith, and it's actually a formula for us to develop self-confidence. Eric Hoffer said that in order for us to learn and grow anything new in our lives, he said it takes a certain degree of confidence. If you have too little confidence, you think you cannot learn or grow. If you have too much confidence, you think you don't have to. Those are the know-it-alls. And he said, sometimes, at all the times in our lives, we find ourselves in one of these. We either think we think that we're incapable of learning and growing. We lack the confidence and faith, or we think that we've got it all, we know it all, and we don't need to have anything kind of new added to us. We're good. We've got it all figured out. And therein lies also a problem. I've been in both places in my life. The first half of my life, I thought I couldn't learn. And then as I started to learn and started to have some successes, I got a little bit overconfident. And I got away from this principle. And so I think understanding that what faith is. And first off, I think it's important we understand it in the Bible. Each of us is given a measure of faith. In other words, I don't have any more faith than you have. Andrew doesn't have any more than I have. We all have the same measure of faith. It's how do we develop that faith? And where do we place our faith? Is it possible? I think when most people think of faith, we think of the positive. When we understand the law of polarity, we understand kind of the positive side of faith. We have faith in ourselves, and we see that as a positive. But we can also have faith in our doubt. We can have faith in our fear. We can have faith in our worry. And so how do we direct our faith? And as an entrepreneur, I think it's really critical that we understand that we have to have faith in a lot of things. Certainly, we have to have faith in ourselves. We have to have faith in our product. We have to have faith in our people if we employ other people. We have to have faith in our vendors. We have to have faith in the marketplace. We have to have faith in the leadership of our country that is setting up kind of the rules of engagement, if you will. We have to have faith in God. We have to have faith that God is truly conspiring for our highest good, that God's not working against us, the universe isn't working against us, that we have to have faith. And so how do we develop this faith? And he talks about faith being the head chemist of the mind. In other words, faith is anchored not only in the heart, it's also an intellectual idea. It's also a concept of our mind. And we're going to talk about in this chapter where that faith is developed as a spiritual characteristic. It's found in the spiritual center of our mind. So I frequently talk about there being two parts of our mind: our conscious mind. This is our thinking mind, where our awareness lies, where our free will lies. And then there's this subconscious mind, which is our emotional mind. This is where all of our programming is. This is where our self-belief is, our self-identity, our self-image, our self-esteem. This is where all of our habits, all of our habits are driven from here. All of our behavior is driven from here. We think of emotion, it's energy and motion. So this is where the dominating vibration of our body temple is. So when we're focusing on what it is that we want to create, our desire, when we're increasing that amplitude of vibration, it's this part of the mind that we're working with, because we're trying to increase the vibration that we actually broadcast out to the world. And make no mistake about it, we do, don't we? I mean, you meet people and you can just kind of feel their energy. They don't need to say anything. They don't need to do anything. You can walk into a business meeting and you can feel it. You can be doing a Zoom meeting and you can just feel the energy of another person. It doesn't require you to be interacting with them. So what we're doing is there's the center part of us, our intuition, that reads the vibrational frequency coming off of them, and it registers an emotion, a feeling. Feeling is a word that we created to describe our conscious awareness of the vibration that either we are in or that we're sensing. And he says here on page 57, he says that we have to make this realistic, this idea, this dream, and that we can actually trick our subconscious mind. In other words, if you lack faith in yourself, if you lack faith in this idea, if you lack faith in this skill, talent, or ability necessary for you to bring this dream forward, who's going to buy from me? How am I going to be able to sell? Will people really show up to my webinar? Am I any good? Will people pay this much money? And we begin to doubt ourselves. How do we build faith? And he says that we can make the deceit. In other words, we can program, even though we lack the faith, we can program a positive vibration of faith and actually create it in our mind. We can actually create a positive where we have a negative. And he says, to make this deceit more realistic, conduct yourself just as you would if you were already in possession of the material thing which you are demanding when you call it upon your subconscious mind. This is on lines 75 through 77. He says, on line 78, he says, the subconscious mind will transmute into its physical equivalent by the most direct and practical media available any order which is given to it in the state of belief and faith that the order will be carried out. So in other words, we can actually program a concept or an idea. We go back to the chapter where we're talking about self-talk, and we talked about the highest level of self-talk. Level 4 there is where we have these I am statements. I'm successful, I'm rich, I'm confident, I'm a great speaker, I'm great at sales. And the problem that most people face when they're trying to kind of program this level of faith and this level of belief in their mind is they look at the very real evidence in their life. They look at their past results and they say, oh my goodness, I'm terrible at sales. I've never been able to sell anything, or I lack the skill, or I lack the talent, or I lack the ability. And what he's saying is that this part of our mind where our faith is really built can't distinguish between what's real or what's imagined. He uses the word deceit. In other words, we can program a lie into our mind. And if we tell ourselves a lie, in this case, a positive lie, I'm successful, I'm rich, I'm famous, I'm a great speaker. The more we introduce this idea to our subconscious mind with belief and faith, our subconscious mind accepts the idea and then begins to produce the idea, begins to find a way to express that idea. This is such a powerful idea once you really lock into it. Because what we know about the subconscious mind is unlike the conscious mind where you have free will. So you can choose to think positive or you can choose to think negative. In other words, you can use what's called inductive reasoning. You can find independent facts to come to a conclusion, or you can start with the conclusion and find facts that support it. In our subconscious mind, it's deductive. It has no ability to reject an idea. It just accepts whatever's put into that mind, whatever's put into the mind, it just accepts it as real, and then it begins to express it immediately and in the most efficient and effective way. A great example of this is, I can remember when I was probably 12 years old, and my sister Jeannie took me to see the movie Jaws. And so here I was in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, nowhere near an ocean. I was sitting in a movie theater. I had a big bucket of popcorn, the big old, jug of soda, as Americans do, and I'm watching the movie. And as we watch a movie, what happens is our conscious mind kind of takes a trip, doesn't it? Our conscious mind kind of just buys into the idea. We accept the reality. We suspend the reality for a moment, and we allow ourselves just to become emotionally involved in the movie. And so there we are, all of us in this movie theater, 200 people, and then dun dun. Dun, 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 dun. And everybody in the movie theater's heart is starting to pop, right? Starting to race. And then all of a sudden, of course, the shark jumps out and, popcorn over. I buried the people behind me with popcorn. I screamed, ah, right? Hold it. I'm in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. There's no shark. I'm nowhere near an ocean. I'm not in the water. I'm perfectly safe. I'm in a darkened, air-conditioned theater, and yet I experienced being attacked by the shark. I experienced it as real. Why? Because I had allowed my subconscious mind to become emotionally involved with the idea. I was focused, and this idea came right into my subconscious mind, and my subconscious mind has no ability to reject the idea. So I just accept it as truth. And then, because the mind is the activity of thought, mind is the movement that takes place between thought and the body. So every thought is expressed in the cell of our beings. And so, if we think anxious or scary thoughts, sometimes our palms will sweat. I'm deathly afraid of heights, right? I can be on the sidewalk in New York City and I can look up a building and I get scared and my palms will sweat. We know that sometimes we can think embarrassing thoughts and our cheeks will turn red. Why? Because the thought is being expressed through the mind. Mind is the movement of thought. and it's expressed in every single cell of our being. And what he's saying here is that we can take an idea where we lack faith. Maybe we lack faith in ourselves. And again, we're using faith and confidence throughout this chapter interchangeably. Make no mistake about it. As an entrepreneur, you're going to have faith and confidence internalized about you, but also in about other people. When I came here today to film this, I wasn't worried at all about Andrew being ready. I had 100% faith and confidence that Andrew was going to have the studio ready, that it's going to be perfect, that the sound's going to be perfect, that the cameras. I have faith, not only in my ability to communicate what I want to communicate to you, but I have faith that Andrew's going to do his job. I have faith that you are going to show up on Saturday and watch it. I have faith in my team who's working the comments. Now, all of these things are also out of my control. I can't control whether Andrew is going to show up on time. I can't control if Andrew's cameras are going to work or the lights are going to work. I can't control if you were going to show up. I can't control if the people on our Team Ambassadors program, by the way, thank you all, who are working the comments. I can't control what they're going to do. The only thing I can control is really what I can do. But I can have 100% faith. And because I have 100% faith in Andrew, in you, in this process, in my team, in our fantastic team ambassadors, I have actually more confidence and faith in my ability to stay focused on what my role is. And so what he's saying here is that if we lack faith in any area of our lives, we can actually build an image of what it is that we would want it to be. And we can see ourselves in possession of it. We can actually feel that energy. We can build this image. We can feel it. We can almost experience it as real. Anchor that feeling in our subconscious mind, and then our subconscious mind accepts it as real, and then begins as fast and as perfectly as possible to express it in our life, as long as it's the dominating thought. The problem is that for most people, they'll do something like this. They'll think of their dream. They'll build a vision. They'll get a vision board, right? They'll do all this self-talk, and they'll do it for, 5 days and then quit. And so it never becomes the really true dominant energy that they're broadcasting out. It's kind of like, instead of the light being like a laser beam, it kind of gets, fractured out. And we never really get that white hot focus. Let's jump over here onto page 84, because I think this is something, again, as an entrepreneur, we have to really drill into our heads. And he says, perfection, this is on page 58, line 84, he says, perfection will come through practice. It cannot come by merely reading instructions. As an entrepreneur, you have to accept that you will never be ready if the standard for you being ready is that things have to be perfect. Things will never be perfect until you start and then see what's imperfect. It's the starting when we are imperfect that allows us to then make it perfect. Even when I started this video today, even though Andrew has filmed in this studio thousands of times, even though we've worked together thousands of times, as soon as he started to roll the camera, as soon as the lights came on, as soon as the microphones were turned on, Andrew began to immediately adjust things. He began to just adjust because he got it 99% right. But now that it's in motion, he says, I can make this a little bit better. I can make the sound a little bit better. I can do this with the lighting. Now, we don't even notice those things, but he, being the specialist, can see that. And so perfection comes through time. It comes through practice. And so as an entrepreneur, you can't wait to get started. You have to kind of, I have a quote that I say, you have to jump and then build your wings on the way down. Now, on line 88, he says, the mind comes finally to take on the nature of the influences which dominate it. In other words, if we're surrounded by people who are going to kind of tear us down, if we're in a negative environment, he says the mind comes to take on the nature of the environment that it's in. It begins to absorb the vibration that we're in. If we're in a negative environment or a toxic environment, the mind begins to take that on. He says, understand this truth, and you will know why it's essential for you to encourage the positive emotions as dominating forces in your mind and discourage and eliminate negative emotions. A mind dominated by positive emotions becomes a favorable abode for the state of mind known as faith. A mind so dominated may at will give the subconscious mind instructions which it will accept and act on upon immediately. And so we want to really in James Allen's book, As a Man Thinketh, in the chapter on serenity, he has a line where he says, take the helm of thought. Take the helm of thought. And what that means is it's not only take the helm of thought where you're kind of controlling your thoughts. That's certainly one aspect of it. But if you're taking the helm of thought, what are you doing? You're actually directing the thought, right? You think of the captain of the ship, and she's holding the helm, and as she's steering the ship, she's looking for the clearest water. She's looking for the bluest water, the smoothest water. So not only is she kind of controlling the buoyancy and the speed, she's also controlling the direction. And that's what we have to do of captains of our own thought. We certainly have to control what we're thinking about. We also, though, have to control the environment that surrounds us. He says on line 102, have faith in yourself and faith in the infinite. See, it's not just faith in you. You have to have 100% faith, certainly in you. You've got to believe in yourself. If you don't believe in yourself, why would anybody else believe in you? As a matter of fact, in my sales training course that I do with Holly Lanesmith, we talk about the number one necessary ingredient for a successful salesperson is their ability to communicate and articulate certainty into the mind of the buyer. That when somebody is buying something from you, they have to have 100% certainty in you, 100% certainty in your product, and 100% certainty in your company. They have to have 100% faith in order for them to feel comfortable enough to buy from you. Sales, at its highest level, is the transference of emotion. We buy on emotion, and then we justify the buying decision with logic. We don't logically buy things, we emotionally buy things. How does it feel for us? We imagine whatever it is that we're going to buy. We imagine ourselves in some future state, and we see ourselves, in the future, in that new home, with the new car, with the new handbag, with the new outfit, with the new resource, with the new knowledge. And so we justify that, but we build the image emotionally. Sales, at its highest level, is the transference of emotion. The primary emotion that we're trying to transfer into the mind of the buyer is certainty. We want them to feel 100% certain that they're making the very best decision that they should be making in order to be, do, or have whatever our product or service or program would provide for them. And so we want to make sure that we're creating that environment through all of our communication with our client. So we have to have faith in ourselves. But we also have to have faith in God. We have to recognize that, this idea that you have didn't come from you. It came through you, it came to you, but it didn't come from you. This idea to build whatever business it is that you want, this idea for you to grow your income, to double your income. I've got a program coming out very soon called Double Your Income. This idea to be able to double your income, this idea has always been here. You just became aware of it. And you became aware of it because inside of you is an unexpressed possibility to be and do and have more. It's the spiritual essence of who you are. As a spiritual being, you always want to be more than you are. You always want to do more than you're doing. You always want to have more than what you're having. That's an expression of who you are spiritually. You're always seeking fuller expression and fuller expansion. And so we have this unexpressed possibility, and then from that desire, we actually attract to us ideas and thoughts, I believe, from the mind of God. Now, some will say from the mind of the universe or infinite intelligence or cosmic principle. But I think most of you know my map of the world. I believe that we don't really create anything in our lives. We co-create. We work with God. God, G-O-D, the grand overall designer of all things. And so when we really think about what our dream is, an idea that was at one time in the mind of God. And so the finite mind of man communicates with the infinite mind of God, and bang, we become aware of this idea. And it resonates with the truth inside of us, the truth for us to be and do and have more. And we say, yes, I want that. And so we have to have faith not only in ourselves, but we have to have faith that God is actually conspiring for our highest good. This is why I 100% firmly believe in your dream. And I will never make an agreement with any limitation that you may have been programmed with in the past as to your inability to bring it out. I believe that if you have been sourced with this idea, and I do believe that you've been sourced with it, and you've been sourced with this idea from the source of all sources, from the source of all things, from God. I believe that if God has sourced you with this idea, then God has resourced you, that you are fully resourced to bring it forward. And this is why you should have 100% faith in you and 100% faith in God. Now, that doesn't mean that you automatically know how to do it. It doesn't mean that you're not going to make mistakes. It doesn't mean that you don't get to get better. It doesn't mean that it's going to be easy. It doesn't mean that you're not going to meet with failure. You're going to have all of those challenges. But what it does mean is that you have the potential to do it. You have the potential to do it. And if you're willing, and as he said is in this book, if you're willing and you're ready to receive it, it can be yours. Now, he says, before we begin, you should be right. I'm on line 103 on page 58. Page 58, line 103. He says, before we begin, you should be reminded again that faith is the eternal elixir which gives life, power, and action. Life, power, and action to the impulse of thought. In other words, when the idea comes into your mind, if that idea is an idea that you believe in and that you have faith in, it begins immediately to be expressed. Now, it works both ways. If the idea comes into your mind and you lack belief and you lack faith, it also moves you to action. It's just action in the opposite direction of what it is that you want. This is so powerful for us to understand that faith gives power, it gives life, and it gives action. Faith is a verb here. He says the foregoing sentence is worth reading a second time and a third time and a fourth time. On line 106, I love this. He says, it's worth reading aloud. Let's just do a little test. Let's just see if you're really into this. If you've got a copy of this book, line 105 says that we should read this again and again. He says we should read it aloud. Go to line 103 and 104. And if you have a copy of the book, read it aloud with me. I know you're at home. I know nobody else, on the site can hear you. But will you play along with this and read this aloud? Before we begin, you should be reminded that faith is the eternal elixir, which gives life, power, and action to the impulse of thought. I hope you read it aloud. See, when I was being mentored through this book with Patrick would never let me go to the next page. If Napoleon Hill says, go back and read the chapter on desire, and there's several times in this book where he'll make reference to the chapter on desire, it says, go back and read it again. Patrick would say, okay, stop. Go back and read it again. If you're reading the chapter on persistence, it'll say, go back and read this again. And oh my goodness, Patrick really held my feet to the fire. So Patrick said, look, he said it's worth reading aloud. Do you want what he's saying? How can you expect to have the promise of the book if you're unwilling to do the work? He said, read it 3-4 times. He said it's worth reading aloud. So if the author of the book, the keeper of the secret, the revealer of the secret is telling you, read it aloud, read it aloud. Before we begin, you should be reminded that faith is the external elixir, which gives life, power, and action to the impulse of thought. On line 107 through 116, he says, faith is the starting point of all accumulation of riches. Faith is the basis of all miracles and all mysteries which cannot be analyzed by the rules of science. Faith is the only known antidote to failure. Faith is the element, the chemical. Think of the alchemist, right? It's the chemical which, mixed with prayer, gives one direct communication with infinite intelligence. Prayer is the movement that takes place between the finite mind of man and the infinite mind of God. That's what prayer is. It's the movement that takes place between your thinking and God. You turn your mind to God and you're thinking a thought and you're sending that message to God. And he's saying that. He says, faith is the chemical through which those thoughts run through. He says faith is the element which transforms the ordinary vibration of thought created by the finite mind of man into its spiritual equivalent. So in our conscious mind, we have this idea, and then we turn this idea over to, so this is the finite mind of man, our conscious awareness, and then we take this idea and we turn this over to the spiritual center of who we are. And this is where faith resides. He says faith is the only agency through which the cosmic force of infinite intelligence can be harnessed and used by man. I think it's really important that we look at kind of the faith vampires, because we all have faith vampires in our lives, don't we? Here's what I want you to think about. Most news sources are faith vampires. CNN, constant negative news, MSNBC, Fox News, all of those have an agenda, and all of those can be faith vampires. Family who hold an attachment to your past. It's possible that you could have faith vampires right there in your family who have built an image, an expectation of who you are and who you will always be. And as you're beginning to try to live this new dream and birth this new idea and bring forward this new you, they have this old image of you. And they begin to destroy your faith. They begin to sow seeds of doubt. Not because they're trying to harm you. It's because they've invested so much of their life in building this image of you that in order for them to now see you as anything different, they have to change their mind. Friends who encourage us or even support us in playing small, for settling for less, for being for playing it safe. I mean, it's very, very, very possible and highly probable that you have friends in your life who love you, who care for you, who don't want to see you get hurt. And so when you marginalize and you don't go after your dream and you don't pursue it, they say, that's okay. You gave it a shot. You tried. It's okay for you to quit. They make it safe for you to quit on your dream. Those are faith vampires. We can have friends who don't celebrate when we win, who just genuinely aren't super excited when we have a win, or who won't cheer you on. We have faith vampires in our own internal voice, our voice of our own doubt, our voice of judgment. This is why most people never really develop this powerful vibration of faith in their lives. We're surrounded by dream vampires. You mean on on these little idiot boxes we've got here with social media. And you go scrolling through and it's, you're just looking for the best of the worst, right? People are just talking about, conspiracy theories. They're talking about, topics that just naturally divide us, that separate us, that have us question everything. I'm not saying you put your head in the sand like an ostrich, but do you need to fill up the bathtub and marinate in it, really? We have dream vampires in the negative images that we see, in negative music, negative movies that just foster fear or foster lack of faith. In the book, The Science of Getting Rich, Wallace D. Waddell says, focus only on prosperity. Focus only on abundance. Don't look at any images of poverty. Get rich first. Build and fortify your faith first, then worry about going and saving the world. But for the first thing, don't sow any seeds of poverty or want or lack or limitation in your awareness. Chances are at your level of financial being right now, you can't make a big enough sustained impact to make a difference anyways. So get rich first so that you can. Go over to page 37 in the book. This is in the chapter Desire. And we're at line 114. He says, only those who become money conscious ever accumulate great riches. Money consciousness means that the mind has become so thoroughly saturated with the desire for money that one can see oneself already in possession of it. What he's saying is only focus on prosperity. It's the difference between building prosperity consciousness and poverty consciousness. Surround yourself with people who will support that which you need to build faith in. Be careful of these faith vampires. They will suck the life right out of you. If we go over to page 60, we're looking at lines 131, and we're going to go all the way down to line 158. And as we do, let's understand that there are laws of thought. There are 7 laws that govern the way that we think, behave, and create. These are the laws of creation. You create through thought. Now, for the last 6,000 years of recorded history, all of the great thinkers, theologians, industrialists, capitalists, have all agreed on this one thought unanimously, and that is that you and I, we become what we think about. That everything you see has been created twice. Everything. Somebody had an idea for this binder clip. Somebody had an idea for the pen, for this table, for the computer or phone that you're watching this video on right now. Everything has as its ancestry a thought, and then that thought moved into physical form. And it moved into physical form through a very lawful process. Everything in the universe operates by law, and there's 7 of these laws. I have a program called Fully Resourced where I teach the entire 7 laws lesson and how you think through each law. But there is the law of vibration. That is that every thought has a calibrated frequency. And we know that vibration sets up attraction. Like attracts like. So people think that it's the law of attraction. It's really not. The law of attraction is secondary. The primary law is the law of vibration. So we understand that everything in the universe has a calibrated frequency, including your thought. The next is the law of cause and effect. Based on that vibration, we can then direct our thoughts, and that's cause and effect. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. And so we know that as we think of a thought and it has a calibrated frequency of vibration, We know that if we focus on that and if we take action on that idea, that action sets up an equal and opposite reaction. That's cause and effect. We also know that we could, because we have been given free will, we can choose a positive or a negative. That tells us that there's a law of polarity. For up, there is down. For left, there is right. For in, there is out. And so that everything has its polar opposite. This is why it's so important as an entrepreneur that we understand this law of polarity, because there will be times where you're faced with making a decision. And you'll ask yourself, is this the right decision? Is this the good or bad thing to do? Should I or shouldn't I? And the answer to the question is yes. Yes, it's a good idea, and yes, it's a bad idea. I mean, there's probably reasons why you should, and there's probably reasons why you shouldn't. See, what we want to ask is not whether it's right or wrong, good or bad, should I or shouldn't I. We want to ask, if I act on it, will it move me in the direction that I want? And so when we have that understanding of polarity as a law of creation, it allows us to make a decision and then have faith in that decision, because we know that the chances are, even when we act out on the idea, there's a high probability that before we get to the positive side of what we want, we may have to go through the law of polarity. We may experience a short-term negative. Then there's the law of relativity. That's the law of comparison. As entrepreneurs, we have to really have a really heightened level of awareness around relativity, because if we don't, we can be locked in and trapped in playing small. An expression of this law is an entrepreneur wants to start a business. Up until that time, they've only made $55,000 a year in income. And now all of a sudden they have an idea that they want to make $250,000. And what they do is they take this idea of $250,000 and they compare it to their $55,000 past result. And they immediately conclude that they can't do the $250,000 because that number's too big. It's not realistic to 4 times your income. That wouldn't be realistic. That number's too small. And so what we have to do is we have to lower the number from 250. We have to go down to maybe, 75,000. Now that feels better. It's just the law of relativity. Is $250,000 a lot of money? Well, compared to what? Compared to what you may have done in the past? Sure, it's 4 times as much. Compared to your potential? Compared to your potential? Compared to what's available for you? Maybe not. So we want to start thinking through this lawful process. The next is this law of rhythm. We understand that there's an ebb and flow. There's a season to sow in your business. And then there's a season to reap. I can't tell you the number of times where people say, I made a Facebook post with my new offer and nobody bought. So now I'm going to change the ad. Or I'm going to quit on the idea. I'm going to close down the program. It didn't work. Well, hold on. Slow down. It's the law. It's the law of rhythm here. There's an ebb and flow. You're in the sowing season of your life or of your business right now. You're not in harvest time. We understand that there's times as entrepreneurs where we're charged up, we feel great. And there's other days where we wake up and there's nothing wrong with us. We're not sick, but we don't have that same level of oomph. And if we're not aware that this could just be a natural expression of the law of rhythm, then we can turn inward and activate, a faith vampire that says, what's wrong with you? You're not motivated. You don't have enough ambition. You don't have enough drive. There you go again. You're quitting. Well, hold on. I'm just in a negative vibration right now. I'm just in a rhythmic low. If you go down the beach and it starts to become, low tide and the beach begins to kind of, the sea begins to go away, and say, well, that's it, close the beaches. That's the end of this ocean. No, it's just in a rhythm of low tide. What follows low tide? High tide, right? The other one is the law of gender. The law of gender is this incubation and gestation period. And so we know that when we set a goal or we're working on something, that there's a gestation period, that it takes time. It doesn't happen overnight. And that's a good thing that it doesn't happen overnight. It allows us to mature. I always say, one of the worst things that could happen to businesses is what I call the Oprah Effect. Most people think the Oprah Effect is a great blessing on your business. Oh my goodness, Oprah discovers you and she says that you're one of her, Oprah's 10 greatest things. And she brings you onto her show. And you make this great cheesecake or whatever it is. And she tells everybody how great the cheesecake is. And she tells everybody to order the cheesecake. And by the end of the show, you have, 1 million buyers. The problem is that you can't fulfill it. And you go out of business. Because now you've got a bad reputation. Before Oprah, crowned you as king of the cheesecakes, you had no reputation. That was okay. You could handle the flow. Now all of a sudden she crowns you king and now you're flooded. And now guess what? You can't. And we see it with what happens to most people who instantly become rich? What happens to most people who instantly become rich? They win the lottery. What happens? They get a big inheritance. What happens? I'll tell you what happens. They end up dead or dead broke. Usually within 5 years. They end up dead broke or in jail. Why? Because they never matured. They never went through the law of gender. They never developed the understanding, the ability, the capacity to grow into that. And so, as an entrepreneur, we understand that we're in process. That not only is there a season to sow and a season to reap, that we understand that the truth isn't always in the appearance of things. So when we're doing something, we say, well, it's not working. We say, hold on. It may be working at a level that we just don't see right now. And that's okay. The last is the perpetual transmutation of energy. It just tells us that energy is in this constant state of change and that we can direct it. We can direct the energy. And so the important part of this is for us to understand that when we have faith, we can have blind faith where we just kind of white knuckle it and we're just kind of hoping, or we can have faith based on an understanding. We may not know exactly how it's all going to work out, but we have faith because we have an understanding and a knowledge of how this is going to be expressed, of the process. Faith based on understanding. It's so critical because, see, what happens with blind faith will fail you at the first sign of a challenge. But faith based on understanding, we wait as one with understanding waits. And so here on line 131, we're at the top of page 60, he says, we're actually picking up from the bottom, he says, thoughts, we'll go to page 59, line 129. He says, thoughts, which are mixed with any of the negative feelings of emotions, constitute a magnetic force which attracts from the vibrations of the ether other similar or related thoughts. So again, it works both ways. We can have a negative or a positive. He says a thought magnetized with emotions may be compared to a seed, which when planted in fertile soil, germinates, grows, and multiplies itself over and over and over again until that which was originally one small seed becomes countless millions of seeds of the same kind. The ether is the great cosmic mass of eternal forces of vibration. It is made up of, and what does he mean by that? The ether is a great cosmic. What he means is this Wallace D. Wattles would call it this thinking stuff. It's our potential thought. It's this open, fertile field of possibility. He says it's made up of both destructive vibrations and constructive. That's our law of polarity. It carries at all times vibrations of fear and poverty, disease, failure, misery, and vibrations of prosperity, health, success, and happiness. Just as surely as it carries the sound of hundreds of orchestrations of music and hundreds of human voices, all of which maintain their own individuality and means of identification through the medium of the radio. So what he's saying is that you have an individual expression. and all the voices, of all the thoughts, of all the ideas, of all the concepts, of all the dreams, you have your own individual expression, your own unique vibration. He says, and from the great storehouse of the ether, of this potential, the human mind is constantly attracting vibrations which harmonize with its dominance, which harmonize with that which dominates the human mind. In other words, if you're going to hold on to a negative thought, you are most likely going to resonate with negative people, negative situations. You'll attract them, even if it's not even though you don't want it. This is one of the biggest puzzles for me is I would be in struggle. I would be, frustrated. I'd go out and I'd cold call and nobody would buy and I would lose an account and an employee would quit. And I would meet with Patrick in my mastermind with him. And he would say, why are you creating this? Why are you attracting this? And I was like, I'm not attracting this. He said, well, it's attracted to the dominant vibration you're holding on to. You've got to change this inner magnet. You've got to start building images of what it is that you want. You've got to start being able to attract the positive that you want. You've got to see yourself already in possession of it. Now let's go over here to the self-confidence formula. Number one, on line 167, this is page 161. He says, first, he wants you to write this out and he wants you to read this. And he wants you to read this every single day. And that is, I know that I have the ability to achieve. And so if we have faith, if we know that we have the ability to achieve, he says, therefore I demand of myself persistence and continued education. Entrepreneurs require more of themselves. We ask more of ourselves. We demand more of ourselves. That's the nature of an entrepreneur. As an entrepreneur is developing faith, we have faith that we have the ability to achieve, and therefore, because we believe that, we demand of ourselves more than what other people demand of themselves. Number two, he says, I realize that the dominating thoughts of my mind will eventually reproduce themselves in outward physical action and gradually transform themselves into the physical reality. Therefore, I concentrate my thoughts for 30 minutes daily upon the task of thinking of the person that I intend to become. Entrepreneurs are very disciplined in their vision. It's not like they kind of have a vision for what it is that they want and then they cast it and never go back to it. No. They concentrate on it. They're driven by their vision. Every single day, they're using their vision as their GPS. And that fortifies the entrepreneur's faith journey. Number three, I know through the principle of auto-suggestion, this is the idea of kind of reprogramming or encoding our mind, as Joseph McClendon would say, any desire that I persistently hold in my mind will eventually seek expression. So I devote 10 minutes daily to demanding of myself the development of self-confidence. See, entrepreneurs stretch themselves more. Entrepreneurs demand of themselves development of self-confidence. Entrepreneurs are continual learners. See, entrepreneurs will see themselves in these 6 things. We'll set goals based on this. We'll set goals on being, not doing. We'll be these things before we worry about necessarily doing these things. Fourth, I've clearly written down a description of my definite chief aim. That's your purpose. Go back to the chapter on desire. And I will never stop trying until I've developed sufficient self-confidence for its attainment. See, an entrepreneur is committed to the degree that they know their work is never done. We don't have faith that one day will arrive. We have faith that one day we won't. That we have faith that when we get to as far as we can see, we have faith that there's going to be more for us. We have faith that there is always more for us. Number 5, he says, I fully realize that no wealth or position can endure long unless built upon truth, justice. Therefore, I engage in no transaction which does not benefit from all whom it serves. In other words, the entrepreneur, as they develop faith, is going to take the high ground. They're going to operate from, the motto of live and let live. They know that not everybody else is going to take the high ground. They know that not everybody else is going to do the right thing, but they demanded themselves. They demanded themselves that they're going to focus on, and everything they're going to do is going to be built upon truth and justice, and engage in no transaction which does not benefit all whom it affects. They're win-win oriented. They're win-win. They're playing their own game. They're not playing the game that everybody else is playing. Go over to line 257 on page 64. We'll bring this in for a landing. Now, in this chapter is the great story of the U.S. Steel Corporation. It's a must read. And again, we're not necessarily studying the book. We're studying the principle outlined in the book through an entrepreneur's journey. But don't miss, if you've never read the book and you've never read the story of Schwab and Carnegie, it's a must read. It is a fantastic story that really, I think, encompasses all the principles in the book. But here on line 257, he says, somewhere in your makeup, somewhere within you, he says, perhaps in the cells of your brain, he says, somewhere within you, there lies sleeping the seed of achievement, which, if aroused and put into action, would carry you to heights such as which you may have never hoped to attain. What's he saying? He's saying, have faith that inside you there's this seed of potential. There's this possibility within you. It's there. It's just waiting for you to call it to action. It's waiting for you to activate it. It's waiting for you to foster, nurture, and cherish it. It's waiting for you to begin to express it. He says, just as a master musician may cause the most beautiful strains of music to pour forth from the strings of a violin, so may you arouse the genius which lies asleep in your brain and cause it to carry you upward to whatever goal you may wish to achieve. If you're lacking faith in your ability, this is a great affirmation for you to read. As entrepreneurs, you have to have faith in you. You have to have faith in God. You have to have faith in the process. You have to have faith in the people around you. You have to have faith in your marketplace, your audience. You have to have faith in your government of those who control the bigger game. It requires faith. Faith. You've been given the same measure as everyone else. I hope through this study, you'll develop it. I'll see you next Saturday. Thanks a lot. Be well. Bye-bye.